The comparison of MiG paragliders. Charger vs Colorado vs Samurai. Hello, my name is Václav Winklarek and I would like to welcome you to a test which should be interesting for all fans of power paragliding, for a few reasons actually. The first one is lying down on the ground right next to me. In this test we will compare the whole product range of reflex wings for power paragliding by Czech manufacturer MEG Para. The second reason, which is no less interesting, is the test pilot himself. Usually, similar tests are done by paragliding instructors or competition pilots, but these wings are evaluated by intermediate pilot. The third reason is the use of two paramotors, which at first glance look the same, but from the testing point of view there is a significant difference between these two. The first is powered by engine with performance of 27 horsepower. The second is powered by engine which could provide 31 to 33 horsepower depending on tuning. Both engines are provided by Czech manufacturer Volkerjet. This will allow us to compare how much additional performance is needed when flying high aspect ratio gliders. For your interest, I will also share the information of how many kilograms is powered by 1 horsepower. So, what can we find in the 5 chapters of this test? The first chapter is comparing the design of each wing from the user perspective, both in numbers and in practice. In the second chapter we will inspect each glider's behavior during inflation in various wind conditions. We will follow that up in the third chapter to see how difficult it is to actually launch and get back in one piece. The fourth chapter will be dedicated to comparison of our feeling from flying each glider and also the stats. The last chapter will summarize all our thoughts on gliders to give you overall idea which glider would be right for you. I also add the start times of each chapter to make it easy for you to find the topic that interests you the most. Let's go to the first chapter then! We will investigate in the first chapter how the user sees the differences between the designs of the gliders. First of all, let's just have a look on the website of the manufacturer. We can find a lot of wings in the category dedicated to powered paragliding. However, we shall be interested only in the free gliders with a reflex profile which were specifically designed for powered paragliding. Which gliders are we about to compare? The basic PPG wing in the MEG Para range is Charger. Out of the free gliders, it's being manufactured for longest period of time and its motto is "the glider which won't let you down under any circumstances." The representative of middle class is Colorado. It has replaced Blades GT in 2018. The manufacturer says it's meant to be flown by demanding pilots. Samurai is on the top of the pyramid. The latest model from 2019 has replaced an older glider called Paradox. The manufacturer has designed this wing for experienced and competition pilots. They add that it's not suitable for intermediate pilots. Well, that makes me wonder how I will be doing, as I am exactly this kind of pilot. So, what can we see from comparing the stats of the wings? At the first glance, it's the span of the wings. The numbers are contrary to impressions. Charger feels like the widest and Samurai looks like a narrow handkerchief. However, the span of all three wings differ by only a few centimeters. When it comes to the root chord and the flat aspect ratio, there is a significant difference between Colorado and Samurai. But there is a notable difference in number of cells between the Charger and Colorado. Judging solely by the blueprint, it seems that Charger has a very simple design. Colorado and Samurai are definitely in different league. While Colorado is based on intermediate wing design, Samurai is much more sporty. The trade-off for all detail gadgets of Colorado is the highest total weight. And one curious fact for the end. Unlike the vast majority of gliders, Samurai has an odd number of cells. So, how the gliders' differences look in real life? Let's put them at top of each other. Significant design differences can be seen at a glance. Charger has reinforced profile only along the ribs of the leading edge, while Colorado has a nylon rod between each cell, which gives it 2.5 times more reinforcement. The same goes for Samurai. We will see the same looking at the trailing edge. Charger has extra reinforcement material only along the ribs, while Colorado and Samurai have additional reinforcement between ribs. Let's go back to the leading edges and let's have a look at the intakes. Charger cells are 32 cm wide, Colorado's 25, and Samurai cells are 23 cm wide. The air intakes by root cord of Charger is 12 cm, Colorado 9, and Samurai is only 5.5 cm. Looking at the profile from the side, we notice that both Charger and Colorado have the classic shape, while Samurai has a shark nose. Let's talk about lines for a while. Charger has all the lines in upper cascade sheathed, while Colorado's and Samurai's lines in the upper cascade are unsheathed. Smaller diameter of lines lowers the aerodynamical drag and also looks cool. However, they have two disadvantages. They like to tangle, which makes pre-flight preparation longer, and they also like to grab random stuff from ground. As long as there is only a single straw hanging, it's not a big deal. However, it's so much worse when the lines get tangled because of it. It has happened to me once that a straw has collapsed my right wingtip. We can also find differences in attachment of the brake lines to the trailing edge. Charger has simple and fixed attachment points, while Colorado and Samurai have additional metal D-rings in the left and right thirds of the trailing edge to improve the efficiency of pilot's input. At the end, let's have a look at the component which is pilot's most frequently used thing, the risers. The risers of each glider vary quite significantly. In the case of Charger, the risers are simple. They are easy to check due to the different colors of the risers. The connection webbing system between the B risers and C risers is also quite simple. The brake handle is attached to the riser by a strong magnet. It's a shame that there is no magnet instead of the extension loop. The trimmers are short and the pilot doesn't need to put too much power to change the position during the flight. The small wingtip steering handle is pulled to its position by a rubber line, unfortunately only with trimmers opened, otherwise it's quite loose. The risers of Colorado are a bit more complex and less easy to see through. Only the A1 strap is colored. The A2 riser changes its position with different angle of attack. The C riser has a much wider range of movement. The brake handle has two magnets, hooray! Unfortunately, when the material of the handle gets loose after some time, then the two magnets have a tendency to tangle and connect, and that is definitely not good. The Colorado trimmers are slightly longer than Chargers when you want to open them, but they can go much further if you want to close them. There is a quite unique component which is a double webbing behind the trimmers, while Charger and Samurai have the standard single webbing. The double webbing is quite stiff and refuses to fit into tense risers. When the webbing on the one riser goes out and on the other goes in, I scared off I have attached the risers to my harness wrong way. The small brake handle works the same as in a Charger, but even here there is a tiny drawback. With opened trimmers and full speed bar, the rubber band won't pull the handle back to its place. It's flying like a flag. The rises of samurai looks quite complicated at the first glance, but they are actually driven to perfection. The main A riser is traditionally distinguished by a color, the A2 riser is movable, and the B riser is blue again. Everything adjustable during the flight goes through pulleys. The friction drag is thus non-existent. The brake handle has two magnets, and the tangling problem is solved by implementing flexible webbing reinforcement which keeps them separate. The length of trimmers is so much longer compared to Colorado. Also, there is a stitching on the trimmers every 2.5 cm. If only they would be colorful. Who is supposed to count them when flying? Out of the three, only Samurai has the power attack system. If you attach a small carabiner into a different loop, you can connect the trimmers with the speed system. So, when you push the speed bar, you will also open the trimmers. Releasing the speed bar will put the trimmers back into neutral position, so you can give the full attention to the brakes. I would have almost forgotten to mention the small brake handles. They are located much lower and are much easier to grab during flight. However, the risers are harder to put into carabiners when wearing gloves. Talking about trimmers, let's compare their stats. The length of each is made by a measuring tape, so it's not a perfect. My most interesting observation is the very short length of Colorado's trimmer when open compared to Samurai. I also cannot figure out why there is such a big range when closing the trimmers. I have never used it really. It's possible to land perfectly with trimmers in the neutral position even in nil wind. The situation is other way around when looking at the speed system. The leading edge is pulled down the most by Colorado. If we combine trimmers and speed system, the growth of range is linear. Why there is a difference in the range of trimmers and speed system is a mystery known only to the designer. As an amateur user, I can say that the Colorado would be better off with a few more kilometers per hour when using trimmers rather than speed bar. How to sum this up? Given how much I don't know about the design, I can only tell you my subjective feelings. When you wind up all the wings next to each other, you will figure out that charge is supposed to be simple. As a matter of fact, there is not a single thing which doesn't have to be there. The more you will be surprised how this simplicity works out. Colorado's design is much more complex. It feels like you would take something proven and made it better to the point of absolute perfection. Samurai, despite its complexity, seems to me to represent a new generation of wings. I would like to give my compliments to the designers for the user-friendly details. Well, I want to share the most recent information which I have only received while editing this video. Well, that was the most lengthy chapter. Let's finally inflate the gliders. I cannot wait to do so in the next chapter. In the second part of this video we shall find out how hard it is to get each wing above the head and keep them there. We are going to test the behavior in different conditions, from perfect conditions to nil wind with gusts from all directions. What is the first step of each pilot when he gets his hand on his new precious? He is gonna go to nearest meadow to fly the kite. Let's start with charger. It inflates gradually and slowly, similar to B-52. It turns slowly upwind and stops right above the head. It's lovely just to fool around with it. When the lift in the canopy drops, it will let you know by going slowly sideways. It will give you enough time to make a correction. However, you will notice the bigger canopy size in stronger wind. Notably, it's incredibly resistant to overpulling the A-Razor's natural beginner glider. The same majestic way it goes up, the very same majestic way it goes back down. A hint for the owners of Charger how to boost up your self-confidence. It's just enough to go to the free flyers training meadow who are desperately trying to keep their wings above their heads. You will be one of the best in there. Just beware that it's probably the wing rather than your hands. How is kiting with Colorado? The inflation feels much faster, but it stops in the flying position the very same way as Charger. It turns upwind by itself as well, but reacts to pilot's input faster. Out of all three gliders, it's most vulnerable in messy conditions. This is especially the case if the pilot doesn't stand in the center of the glider or in sideways conditions. It will not inflate straight up, but the sideways. Here we can see the result of both. On the other hand, it has a tendency to stabilize itself above the head. If the conditions are perfect, it behaves as well as Charger. Easy to go up and easy to go down. As long as the conditions are nice, Colorado feels better than Charger. However, it demands advanced pilot skills in challenging winds. The last but not least kite to fly is Samurai. Even with the minimum effort, it rushes up above your head, and for its stabilization it's necessary to make a step backwards. It's nice to feel less drag thanks to smaller surface of the canopy. It reacts to pilot's input immediately. If you pull the A-Razors too aggressively, the center of the leading edge will collapse and the wingtips will shoot forward. However, once you manage to get it up, it will stabilize itself. It's surprising how little it takes to inflate Samurai properly. You can feel that it wants to fly forward. When fully inflated, it behaves lively but it's stable. However, it's necessary to react promptly to its signals. Just for fun, I have measured the time it takes to rise the glider. The final result is an average of the times in 3 videos. It takes 5.3 seconds to get above the head with Charger. Colorado will get there 1 second faster, so 4.3 seconds. And Samurai can do it in 3.5 seconds. These times tell you how much time you have for your corrections. Now is the time to swap my cap for helmet. How well will it go with almost perfect conditions? Let's start with Charger. Even with paramotor on my back, it goes up in a reliable manner, but quite a lazy pace. You will notice the big surface of the canopy, which will drag you backwards. You will have enough time for any corrections. In these conditions, Charger has 100% efficiency. And now the same conditions with Colorado. To put it simply, there is nothing to criticize. The inflation seems to me easier than Charger's, as it won't drag you that much. The inflation is also a bit faster. Let's have a look at another nice feature of Colorado. We have already mentioned higher sensitivity when the pilot doesn't stand in the center of the glider. Then the glider shoots up sideways. However, if the pilot won't panic and continues pulling the glider the same direction, the canopy will eventually stabilize itself even without any further pilot's input. And what about the competition Samurai? There might have been times when it was hard to inflate gliders of this category, but these times seem long gone. I would have ranked it first in front of Colorado if there wouldn't have been two small details. Samurai also doesn't like if you stand off-center or sidewinds, but not as much as Colorado. The glider has also tendency to go upright. Nevertheless, you need to do corrections fast and sensitively. And here we can see the second flaw of Samurai. Its leading edge has a tendency to collapse if you pull the erasers too much. All the gliders behave well in good conditions, but what will change with variable gusts? To inflate charger takes a while, but then it's just a matter of how fast you can run. Charger tolerates and forgives anything. If you don't believe me, let's make a little test. How will Charger react when inflated 90 degrees to the wind? In the beginning it's quite lazy and hesitant, but then it just slides up, then a little correction and voila, it would be flying! How does Colorado behaves in the wind? You run and nothing. Let's get ready for another go. Again we run, we fly, we fly, we fly, we fly, and nothing. Okay, jokes aside, we have just found an only one considerable drawback of Colorado. In nil wind conditions, it seems like it just hits a wall at some 60 or 80% of inflation and just wouldn't continue. More surprisingly, it takes just 1 meter per second upwind and Colorado inflates perfectly. Luckily, there are two solutions to this issue. The first way is to give a strong initial pull to the wing. So if necessary, just do 2 or 3 steps backwards and run like the devil's chasing you. And boom, it flies. However, it's fair to say that instructors don't like to see these few steps backwards. That is why you should be able to give this strong impulse on a spot. It looks beautiful, but personally, I would rather do steps backwards in nil wind. The second way to solve this issue comes from unexpected source. If we tried everything and failed anyway, it's time to open the user's manual when we can read on page 18 that we should open trimmers by 1 or 2 centimeters. Let's do exactly that and let's give it another go. Let's have 2 takeoffs and compare the influence of trimmer settings in parallel videos. The first time with trimmers in the neutral position and the second time with trimmers 2 cm open, both with a weak initial impulse. This is the maximum the Colorado can make it. The wing has inflated better and goes slightly higher when the trimmers are open. I think that in case of taking off in the nil wind, 85% is done by a strong initial impulse and 15% is contributed by the opened trimmers. So you will fly eventually, but I personally see it as a manufacturer's challenge to improve when designing their next model. Especially when I attach myself to Samurai in the same conditions. It has risen up with no effort, it stays up beautifully, and I even have time to fool around with it. That is not a coincidence, as all my attempts are like that. When it comes to inflation, Samurai beats both Charger and Colorado in challenging conditions. While we are at it, let's see how Samurai goes up in a 90 degrees side wind, and success on the very first attempt. To be fair, Samurai needs a high speed to keep above head in nil wind. I cannot make it with the paramotor on my back without engine support. If you are centering yourself by feeling the pressure in the air risers, it's quite possible that you will collapse the leading edge in the nil wind. How to assess all this running workout? Let's give medals to the competitors. The third place goes to Colorado, which is the best in optimal conditions but is the worst by far in nil wind. For this schizophrenic result, it doesn't even deserve a better ranking, as the wing design for the widest range of pilots simply shouldn't behave like that. Moreover, it's the takeoff characteristic which gives the pilot his or her first impression. The second place goes by a little to Samurai, which is amazing in all kinds of conditions. It has missed the first place only because its sporty characteristics are not for everybody. It means the need to react fast and accurately. On the other hand, it was meant to be like that. I have no doubt that this glider will be nice for ground handling even for intermediate pilots. So, the first place goes to Charger, because it won't let you down and will tolerate you a lot. In a nil wind is better Samurai, in good conditions is better Colorado. Overall, Charger won't disappoint a wide range of pilots. It's very resistant to the pilot's inaccurate inputs and gives loads of time for the right corrections. The only downside is that the pilot's ground handling skills will inevitably start to stagnate. Now is the time to start the engine and see what will happen to this ranking after the takeoff. The result is in the third chapter of this test. In the third chapter we shall investigate how the wings behave during the takeoff and landing. Perhaps I will ruin the point of this chapter when I say that all the gliders actually did very well. However, each of them needs to be approached differently. An unsuccessful launch with wind speed over 1.5 meters per second with a strong paramotor is always due to pilot error. For sure, it's possible to launch after just a few steps. That is why we will focus on launches in weak conditions with not too strong paramotor. Thus we will be able to see the differences between the wings quite clearly. For takeoff with Charger you just need to follow the school handbook. At first, put your weight forward and pull. Secondly, wait until the glider slides up above your head, you don't make it faster anyway. And thirdly, gradually speed up and pull the brakes gently. I would add one more point, which is not roll your wing from left to right with chaotic hand moves. Colorado has it quite different. For inflation, you need to give a stronger impulse. If it inflates slantwise, ignore it and keep your direction. After a while it self-corrects to paramotor pull direction. Samurai needs it other way around. Gentle linear pull with no impulse by your body and weight only slightly forward. Run like the devil's chasing you while pulling the brakes gently and gradually add the more power. Unfortunately, you cannot see in these videos the different impressions of the pilot when launching each particular glider. Different takeoff characteristics of the wings will be shown in the chart of the lift and the forward speed of the wing. There are three important levels of lift for takeoff. I call the first one it holds, which represents the amount of the lift when the wing stays above the pilot's head and won't fall backwards or sideways. The second, higher level of the lift will be called it pulls. This is when you can feel the lift, but as soon as you would actually lift your feet, you would go back down. The most important level of the lift is it flies. The wing won't drop when you lift your feet, and it's capable to keep the flight level at least. I want to emphasize that I will be talking about the subjective feelings from the wings which are not measured in any way. So, how does it feel to launch with charger? Out of all three gliders, it needs the lowest velocity to stay in its holds position. When it reaches the level it pulls, there is only a small speed difference to the level of it flies. This lowers the risk of dropping if I would try to launch too soon. Colorado needs similar speed for staying up as charger. The speed when it starts to pull is slightly higher, and then the lift grows linearly until the point of it flies. Subjectively, Colorado has the biggest difference between the speed of it pulls and it flies. That means you need to do 2 or 3 steps more with Colorado to actually take off compared to charger. This increases the risk of dropping back to the ground for those who tend to sit into the harness prematurely. On the other hand, it provides more time to abort the launch, for example if you notice a tangled brake line. Personally, I prefer this linearity of Colorado. Samurai needs the most speed to be kept in flyable position compared to the 2 other wings. For sure, it needs the most speed to reach the level it pulls, where the speed is so fast that you will feel ripped off the ground immediately. Samurai has the smallest of differences in speed between the levels it pulls and it flies. Let's see how the wing can handle a pilot's mistake with a premature launch high when the glider already pulls but still doesn't fly. The first one to test is charger. And hop! It thinks for a while in the same flight level whether it will be fly with me or not, but then we climb. How can Colorado take a small jump? And up, and paramotor is broken into pieces. I must admit that I have almost smashed my paramotor when trying to demonstrate this. So always make 2 extra steps. Let's try to do similar jump with Samurai. And hop! It swings 30 centimeters down and voila, we fly! The instructors get mad, as a good pilot should never ever experience this kind of situations. We are supposed to sit down once the glider provides a safe level of lift and climbs reliably. If a pilot makes this mistake, Charger and Samurai would give you a slightly better chance to get away with it. Talking about impressions. There are differences how the wings communicate with the pilot through the risers during the launch. Charger and Colorado inform you about the lift and the position of the glider behind your back by both the pressure in the risers and the position of the air risers on your thumbs. Given the fact that these changes happen faster with Colorado, I have a better overview about what is going on above my head. In the case of Samurai, the pressure in the risers when inflating is quite slight, so it's hard to estimate where the glider is at any particular moment. Thus it is better to rely on the air risers on your thumbs. Let's get back to flying. Now we are going to test the reaction of the wing to the typical pilot's mistakes. As soon as we get the glider above the head, we will change the direction of the run. We will pull each brake differently and change the speed of running. We will exponentiate the mistake of changing direction by pulling the right brake handle down. Now turn, neither brake handle. Charger reacts by rolling, but we launch anyway. This is the only risky aspect when taking off a charger. If the glider swings sideways and starts to pull, it won't stabilize itself back. If it swings to the side more than 20 degrees, it's better to abort the launch. Anyway, the roll of the glider to one side is always a consequence of pilot error. I have hesitated a while whether to use this video with Colorado or not. Unlike the others, the mistake here is not intentional and shows the one of the worst takeoffs in my pilot career. But it's quite instructional, so I will swallow up my ego. Colorado goes up a bit sideways, but generally in correct direction. I misjudged the situation and in huge confusion changed the direction of my run by 30 degrees to the right. Now look how Colorado reacts. It has adapted perfectly to the new direction without a single correction. My second trial is a canopy inflating and moving sideways. I will execute a little correction, but under the full power forward the wing will automatically stabilize itself into the direction of the launch. This auto-correction ability is a strong advantage of Colorado. Colorado is the most resistant to chaos caused by a pilot. Samurai won't be that forgiving and will react adequately to your inputs. Samurai's response to chaos is very dynamic. It can even collapse the leading edge. Easy takeoffs with Samurai demand sensitive handling. What should you be aware when launching these wings? Colorado often inflates sideways, more sideways, and even more sideways. The reason is either side wind or the pilot being off-center of the glider. Colorado will have the smallest percentage of perfect inflations out of all three gliders. It will always react to the most significant falls. The advantage of this phenomenon is the mentioned auto-correction minus its sensitivity to external conditions. So, even if Colorado runs quite tragically sideways, with a little correction by steering toggle, the force of paramotor can push the Colorado into the original planned direction of the takeoff. I want to mention two more things about Samurai. It reacts to overdone initial impulse by overshooting its wingtips. Beware of collapsing the leading edge by pulling the air risers too much. If your launch was unsuccessful, it was probably one of those two things. There is a popular pilot saying, "You can go up, but you must go down." Let's have a look at the two types of landing, which is a steep landing with constant input of brakes and flaring when you slide at high speed very low above the ground. When doing the steep landing with Charger, it goes down slowly, just like a B-52 bomber. You will touch the ground with a minimum forward speed and the glider will gently fade behind your back. This is a Charger's real virtue. How can Charger handle flaring? Well, the last 5 or 6 meters before it's completely lose all its energy, it's not too impressive. One more try from different angle. Well, no change there. Charger is made for steep landing style and you won't enjoy the flaring style of landing too much. Colorado can do a steep landing quite easily as well. It approaches at a lower angle of flight and slightly higher speed. The wing is very nice to put down. However, it does especially well at flaring. Touching the ground is almost with nil forward speed. So, you can choose whichever style you prefer with Colorado, no matter the wind conditions. Steep landing with Samurai means a lot of running on the ground, which will turn into the flaring anyway. An honest shot at flaring is a whole different story. I have glided 27 meters with the last vertical meter, so you better master this technique, as it is a must with this wing. How to sum up all launches and landings? Charger was designed to be used as a schoolbook of paramotoring says. Compared to the other wings, it's the slowest and it's made to be foolproof, even when you accidentally blow wind by the propeller into the rising canopy. The only downside of the wing is imperfect self-correction when it inflates slanted with the full power. All in all, Charger should be a standard wing in every decent PPG school. The takeoffs with Colorado could make it to the first prize in this test thanks to intuitive reactions and its ability to stabilize itself above the pilot's head. However, it's very vulnerable to changing conditions and you need to get used to give it a proper strong initial impulse in slow wind. Nice gradual rise of lift in the canopy when inflating will cost you a few extra steps when launching. Generally, making one aspect of Colorado better will worsen another one somewhere else. The most favorable feature is easy landing. Colorado can do both steep landing and flaring. Samurai ask for different launching habits compared to Charger and Colorado. You need to add the power gently and gradually without putting your weight forward. Once you get used to it, you will be delighted. It inflates swiftly with no effort, and as soon as you give more power, it will rip you off the ground. As a bonus, you will get a lot of fun when landing. Just beware that you will need a bit more space for it. However, Samurai needs significantly more speed when taking off in nil wind. It is not meant to be flown by beginners as it doesn't tolerate pilot errors too much, and there is a lot of speed going on when landing. Whoever can handle a mid-range glider like Blaze or Colorado will be enthusiastic about Samurai. So we took off. Now is the time to fly together in the 4th chapter to see how our gliders behave in sky. In the 4th chapter we shall look into the flying behavior of the wings. Let me share my subjective feelings. Charger could be characterized by word ease. In calm air it's very stable and peaceful. You can attach the brake handles back to the risers and simply enjoy the view. The same goes even when you open the trimmers fully and push the speed bar all the way down. It manages thermal bubbles with no shocks. It feels as though you are attached to the canopy by rubber bands. On the other hand, the suspension will not give you too much information about what is going on in the air. Charger won't tell you which wingtips has just hit turbulence. All you know is that you are a monkey bouncing on a rubber band. Charger prefers to turn slowly in a calm manner. That doesn't mean that you cannot push it into a steep maneuver, but it will be kind of reluctant about it and think for a while if you are sure about it. The glider's reaction time on inputs from handles has a small delay. You need to take it into account when doing maneuvers. Precise piloting is a little bit demanding due to the delay compared to Samurai and Colorado. If I exaggerate it a bit, it feels like driving a bus. You need to think in advance where you are going to go and how you are going to get there. 30 minutes of fooling around in turns will make your hand hurt as it takes the most power to pull compared to the other wings. When executing deep spiral, the descent speed will stop just above 5 meters per second. To make a Charger drop more than 6 meters per second means fighting a huge pressure in the brakes, which you won't keep for long, and thus you end up exiting the spiral safely after the two 360 degrees turns. The trimmers are short. You can get an extra 5 km/h speed by opening them fully. You can close the trimmers even with your pinky fingers with no effort. All in all, Charger is made to fly peacefully. It silently takes care of pilot and prevents him to getting into potentially dangerous situations. The only thing is that a pilot might get bored of flying a bus after some time. What are the impressions from flying Colorado? It can be characterized by the word linearity. It flies as smoothly as a high-velocity train on magnetic cushion. In calm air, it eliminates any shock and provides maximum flying comfort to the pilot. It feels incredibly compact, as if it would be made of single piece of Kevlar rather than a cloth. Colorado absorbs a lot of turbulence, but when it's too much, you will get a smack to the whole wing. It feels like driving onto a road bump too fast for a shock absorber to take it. You just don't know which one has been hit. This is how Colorado isolates you from turbulences. Colorado likes fluid turns in elegant and fluent curves, and it doesn't care if the turns are flat or sharp. Unlike Charger, the reaction time of Colorado is much shorter and the wing's agility is one class higher. You won't make the sharpest turns with Colorado, but definitely the most fluent. Precise piloting is easy and intuitive thanks to its predictability. This allows you to dare a lot of it. If you try to derail its perfect curve in a turn by a strong chaotic input, it will be hesitate for a while asking you, "Do you really mean that?" Then it will jump onto a new line that you made it do and will try to get into a new perfect curve again. Compared to Charger, higher agility in vertical movement is delivered by a shorter brakes responsiveness rather than better climbing or sinking skills. Well, the deep spiral is a huge difference. Colorado was born for spirals. Where Charger ends, Colorado starts. 11 meters per second is a normal value on a variometer. Out of all three wings you will get maximum G-force. It's essential to lose the energy gradually, as it can overshoot quite dramatically. There are two things I don't like about the trimmers. Firstly, you need to pull hard to close them. You need only half of the effort to do the same job with the Samurai. And secondly, the short range of trimmers and the long range of speed system don't correlate with the flying characteristic, which I would personally call Gran Turismo. I would like to meet the masochist who would prefer to push the speed bar for 2 hours rather than just open the trimmers. So, in a nutshell, Colorado is by far the most stable and compact out of the three. It tries to provide comfortable distance from turbulences to provide the best in-flight sensation. The agility is amazing. It likes to move in fluent, elegant curves and doesn't put up well with chaotic changes in piloting. The mentioned sturdiness of Colorado has one reason. Once upon a time I was flying happily towards the Blockner, when all of a sudden I could see a UFO cloud in distance. Before I made up my mind what to do about it, I was already underneath it. I decided to turn back and turn off my camera. After a minute, crazy turbulence started. The maximum climbing rate was 8.3 and sinking rate was 7.2 meters per second. I landed with brown underwear on the meadow called Oslo. How did Colorado do? In the worst moment the canopy rustled a bit, but stayed exactly when I want to see it, above my head. After this, I trust Colorado absolutely. And how does it feel to fly Samurai? Samurai is a joy machine! Hurrah! It's very stable in direct flight with the trimmers in all positions. Neutral, fully opened. Even with full speed. By the way, I just fly downwind 90 km per hour and it's absolutely stable. It's possible to make turns in full speed with the same stability and fluidity. When the air gets more light, it starts to talk to you through the wingtips. Samurai will let you know what is going on by changing the pressure in the brake lines. You won't experience this degree of pleasant contact with the air when flying either Colorado or Charger. It's fair to say that Samurai is more alive. If the deep spiral is needed, you can easily get a sink rate of over 12 meters per second. You need to exit a spiral dive slowly and gradually, otherwise you are going to swing a lot. Doing the same sinking rate, you won't feel as much G-force as with Colorado or Charger. The sinking rate 5 meters per second is actually a standard turn for Samurai. And now the best! Samurai reacts promptly to any pilot's input. The move of your hand translates to the move of your glider immediately. I was praising Colorado's agility, but Samurai will read your mind. The best climbing and sinking rate gives you a new dimension. Samurai can turn your flying into your private Disneyland full of toboggan. However, this will make you ultimately hungry for more and you will be tempted to try more and more. And one day you might not get away with it. To be totally fair, the high agility means that you need to concentrate a lot to do a simple gradual turn. Samurai has a natural tendency to push you constantly into steeper turns every time. And now one more note to the handling. The Samurai has 2D steering system. If you want to turn by pulling the brake handle straight down, you will pull a lot and won't get much in return. However, if you pull sideways to your body, you will get a live reaction for a relatively small input. If you have never tried a glider with 2D steering handling, it's necessary to give a lot of concentration into it. Otherwise, steering feels arduous, faint and not sharp enough. I would have almost forgotten to mention one big advantage of Samurai, which is its long trimmers. Extra 14 km per hour without touching the speed bar. Now there is more like it. To sum it up, I am quite a fault finder, but I haven't found any faults when flying Samurai. The speed, stability, high agility, communication with the air, all in one package. Lovely, but beware! Samurai will execute its master's commands with no questions, and it's up to the pilot to realize his or her own skills limitations. Let's now move our focus from the impressions to the numbers and let's start with the speed. But how to measure speed in active air? First of all, we are going to measure the GPS speed flying upwind. Then we turn 180 degrees and measure the GPS speed flying downwind. The actual speed is an average of these two values. I have repeated this procedure 3 times in 3 flights. The speed is recorded for all 5 key combinations of the adjustable elements. The manufacturer states the values for the 3 of them, so let's see how our results matches. The results of Charger. It can make it to the allowed deviation at its minimum and with trimmers fully open. However, the maximum is 2 km per hour slower. The situation is similar with Colorado. Just the difference from maximum is quite significant. Even with the tolerated deviation, we get 60 km per hour, and it's quite far from the stated 64 km per hour. Colorado and Charger both speed up more by pushing the speed bar than by opening the trimmers. I wish it would have been the other way around. Samurai is the fastest wing. Yes, it really can fly 70 km per hour at its maximum. With trimmers fully open, it even flies 6 km per hour faster than stated by manufacturer. It seems that the manufacturer has recently changed its traditional ratio of trimmers and speed system in the favor of trimmers. And that is definitely the right choice, thanks! To fly it, you need some power behind your back, so let's have a look at measuring the RPMs of the engines. The first thing you notice is that the stronger engine has a lower RPM in any flying mode. That means less fuel consumption. And how did it feel from the point of view of a 100 kg pilot? Charger feels perfect with 27 horsepower paramotor. I would even say that the stronger one didn't feel right with it. You can fly Colorado with any of the paramotors. I personally prefer the stronger paramotor, especially on long distance tasks, when it delivers higher in-flight comfort. The full potential of Samurai can be unlocked only with a stronger paramotor, which gives you better starts, more agile maneuvers, and the speed simply needs the power. See that the RPMs are the same for all three gliders with the trimmers in neutral position. That means the same fuel consumption per 1 flying hour. So, what's the deal with the better fuel efficiency of high-class gliders? It's true, because the consumption per kilometer is slightly less for the high aspect ratio glider. If I would fly a certain distance with Samurai with the trimmers in neutral position, I would end up with more fuel in my tank compared to flying the same distance with Colorado or Charger. However, you will probably trade the fuel efficiency for higher flying speed. I have done two 150 km triangles with Colorado and Samurai. I have done it slightly less than 3 hours with Colorado, but it took me only 2.5 hours with Samurai. I had pretty much the same amount of fuel in my tank in both cases. The Samurai is roughly 9% more fuel efficient compared to Colorado, but I have saved 16% of time. I have used the Samurai's higher efficiency in the form of higher traveling speed. The last measured value was sinking and climbing rate, which are hard to measure. The actual climbing rate per second seen on a variometer is not exact, so I have decided to measure time needed to climb 100 meters and then calculate the climbing rate in meters per second. The values actually are pretty much similar to my subjective feelings. The biggest differences were measured with Samurai, which you can notice from its flying behavior. And we are done with flying. Now it's time to get back on the ground and sum it all up in the last chapter. And there goes the final ranking. What to say about each wing after all the tests? I will start with Samurai this time. You see, you might find a wing on the market which is slightly faster, or more agile, or weightless, perhaps similarly stable, but you definitely won't find it in one well-balanced package, as it is in the case of Samurai. The manufacturer has successfully resisted the desire to produce one-dimensional competition wing, and instead they release a wing for a wide range of sport pilots who want to have fun in the air. If you are comfortable with the mid-range gliders such as a Blaze GT or Colorado and are thinking about your next step, don't hesitate to go for Samurai. You won't regret it. However, that would be too big a step to upgrade from the Charger class glider. You need to react a bit faster. You will be better off with a wing from the mid-range class for a season or two. I must admit I was a little bit afraid of this wing initially, but Samurai has proven to me that is ready to serve its master devotedly and reliably. The name says it all. So the rumors are right. Samurai is a new superstar of PPG Sky. Samurai's trump is its well-balanced versatility. And now I shall jump to the other side of the range to Charger, because they have one thing in common. Similarly to Samurai, Charger provides well-balanced set of characteristics to its target pilots. These are, however, completely different. The aim of Charger is to get anybody to the sky, keep him there with no interference, and get him back safely to the ground. And it is doing a wonderful job. So the target group here would be the pilots with up to 100 flying hours. Weekend pilots with no special ambitions who are flying some 30-40 hours in a year. Their flying skills are not getting too much better over the years, and they appreciate mainly the safety and pure joy of flying. And sooner or later all pilots who need a bit more time for anything. Let's be frank here and admit to ourselves that aging won't make our reactions any faster. If the Charger would my only PPG wing, I would consider replacing it in only two circumstances. If I would be flying all the time with the full speed bar and fully open trimmers and the speed is still not enough, or if I would be turning a lot and start to be bored with the bus driving feeling. Otherwise, there is no reason for a change. A tip for manufacturer for the next generation. It would be great to get rid of that feeling of driving a bus. Even though the inflation is great, Samurai shows that it can be done better. And I wouldn't be afraid of making the trimmers a bit longer and more efficient. Otherwise, leave it as it is. A reliable wing of this kind will always have its place on the market, especially when it is as well balanced as a Charger. At the end, I would like to talk about Colorado because it's different from the other two gliders. Instead of balancing all the characteristics of the wing, the manufacturer has decided to enhance a few particular ones. This, however, will always be at the expense of some other characteristics due to laws of physics and aerodynamics. So you will get the pairs of the pros and cons. Examples: the sturdiness of the wing leads to the tough shocks in messy air. High in-flight comfort eliminates the ability to communicate with the air. That beautiful predictability in the turns is incompatible with the pilot's impulsive decisions. Autocorrection of the wing above the head leads to high vulnerability to messy wind on takeoff. This is the reason why there are such differences in evaluation of the wing by various pilots. It simply depends on which flying characteristic you personally prefer. The true nature of Colorado is definitely cross-country Gran Turismo type wing, long distances without any complications. With its agility, it will do a great service to a pilot thinking a step forward. If I am the type of pilot who sees an avenue and already has a plan how to fly through it, Colorado is the right wing for me. If I am the type of pilot who changes plan in the middle of the turn, I'm not quite sure this is the right wing for me. I don't want to confuse you. Colorado is a great wing if you want to upgrade from Charger. I can guarantee that you will get used to each other with Colorado, and you will never want Charger back. If you upgrade from the other Blaze, then it depends on what kind of pilot you are. Also, I have this feeling that the Colorado may be the right glider for experienced PG pilots who are starting with PPG. Again, a note for the manufacturer. Please change the risers. Samurai shows that it can be done better. Make the inflation better in nil wind and take a bit from sturdiness. And extend the name with the letters GT, which suits Colorado so much. Let's review all the talks into a chart. You can see quite nicely that focus of charger's easygoing flying characteristic is a trade-off for average agility. Samurai is good at everything, but demands an experienced pilot. Colorado's focus is on the features which you appreciate when doing cross-country flights. Last cut and the end. When the idea to compare these three gliders has popped up in my head, I had no idea how time-consuming it could get. It was great ride and I have learned a lot. If you have a different opinions on my notions, that's also good. After all, each pilot prefers different things. If you find the test useful, I will be grateful for any financial contribution to help cover the costs of it. I wish you many pleasurable flying hours and hope to see you at the next test.